Welcome back to Box to Battlefield. So good to see you again. And we're almost finished our King Tiger. We're going to put a little bit of groundwork underneath the King Tiger in the end, but we're at episode, I think, 13 or 14. And I think by the time we finish today's episode, plus one more to tie everything together, the tracks, the little trinkets that go on our tank, we should pretty much be done. Obviously the barrel and that sort of stuff. So, but off camera and before filming started today, I hairsprayed our tank, our project, and here it is here underneath, and I wrapped all this tissue around it to protect all what we've been doing for the last month from more hairspray and all that stuff all over our camouflage pattern. I only had this on here sort of pinpointing where I'm going to use our shell hits and our hairspray to its effect. So the burning area and all that stuff, that's not been hit with hairspray. Just in around this area here where our shell hits lie. Now, you can't sort of accomplish this without having a little shelf queen to help you out. So I've been fooling around with a little old dusty old Panther of mine from the early 2000s. I think you guys have all seen this poor little Panther on film in the past. And so like I say, about 15 minutes ago, I put on a layer of hairspray. But let's back up to the previous day. Let's back up to yesterday. Yesterday, as you guys know, these shell hit areas were just white primer. Then I used my concoction of my iron color that you guys all have come to know as the manhole cover kind of color, which is XF9 mixed with a touch of NATO black or flat black. XF59 for NATO and flat black is, I think, number 1, XF1. So either one of those colors plus this, the majority of it being this, lies down on top of the primer. Then hairspray. Late yesterday I put on a coat of hairspray that possibly just protects, if nothing more, that little bed of the ground color, the iron color. So now what we're going to do is, like I say, 15 minutes ago I applied the hairspray, and now we are going to apply a brand new color. Now the color, a lot of, like for instance Mig, who's certainly in the very top percentage of maulers on this planet, I think. He's a fantastic mauler. But he was describing in a book I was reading about shell hits, about in the past 60 years, colors and this sort of thing don't change. All burnt out tanks are somewhat similar. This was an article written, I think, in 2005. But I take that not so true. Only because of thickness of steel. You have a fire inside one of these tanks versus inside a soft skin or inside, say, a Panzer III where the steel is not as thick as this, your color variances are going to be different. So what Mig was saying, I think, was that maybe the series of colors, oranges, reds, soft little taupey kind of colors, yes, all those colors are the colors we're going to use, but to apply all this or all this to, say, a Panzer III or a Panzer II, I just have a feeling that the order of color would be different, just because of thickness of steel. I mean, and you guys know I'm not going to preach about how thick the steel is on these tanks, but they're different than a Panzer II, and they're different than a Panzer III. And some of the combat vehicles of today are made out of aluminum. So, side skirts and what have you. I don't mean the body of the tanks of contemporary armor, but So things do burn at a different color and a different, there's different weights to colors. So um, just wanted to throw that out, that if I was now going to go and do a Panzer II, the color selection applied would be slightly different. Okay, enough said. And like I said, MiG is in the top 2% of the maulers on the planet. So for me to sit here and say he's incorrect, that's nonsense on my part. So now, what I've done is I've taken my favorite little color here for mixing and warming up colors, and we're dealing with a lot of heat here. So I mixed these two together. This is XF15 and XF9 to make up a very soft color, which is going to go on top of this iron color. And I want a lot of contrast behind these shell hits. So this iron color, this manhole color, is now going to be coated over top with this pinkish tone. And then I'm going to sit here and, as you guys know the hairspray technique by now, watching me do these kinds of things, we're going to see it come alive. And a lot of it is going to be because of the contrast. This is a much lighter color, and I've mixed these two, wasn't quite satisfied with the lightness of it, and added just a pinch. Like, I'm talking like a one brush load of white into my color here. So contrast is key on these things. That's why when I do the Tiger tank next, I'm going to, and if you're not Hairspray fans, guys, maybe the next episode when I get to this is going to be a boring, oh, here goes Brown again, he's going to get into his Hairspray thing again and blah, blah, blah. But my next project is going to be this in a winter setting with the Hairspray technique. The majority of the tank is going to be white. I'm not going to take it right down to the German yellow again with splashes of white. It's going to be the majority of this tank is going to be white. I'm building that for this theme that they're having at the AMP show. And the AMP show, as you guys know, is coming up in the spring of 2019, in May 9th through 11th. And their theme is going to be snow, of course, in Buffalo. They probably have 10 feet of snow now, and it's American Thanksgiving. So, and they have a very fantastic hockey team right now. So, Buffalo Sabres are flying. But in any event, so my my Tiger is being built for this theme award. Anyway, let's get to the business of what we're up to here. So you need a shelf clean. You need to try the color. So I'm just going to load my airbrush. The camera crew is going to move in a little bit so that we can see what we're up to here. I'll do a little splash just to test the color on our old Queen here, and then start on to our King Tiger. So let's do that. The cameras will move in and we'll get to the finer points. Thanks, guys. Okay, so in using the Hairspray technique, gentlemen, one of the common things whenever mixing paint is the first thing you're going to reach for is the type of thinner that goes with your particular paint. And I did it this morning. I got this all prepared, ready to put into my airbrush and mix the three colors. And you guys are going to do the same. You guys are going to accidentally pull this off your shelf because you're into the painting mode. Hairspray technique works the best and cuts down on your energy, kind of, to make it the effect possible, is by not using this. You have to use just regular tap water and a little pipette. Away you go, and you dip this into your paint and use that as your carrier, your thinner. And once again, when I go to do my Tiger, the first thing I'm going to reach for is my paint thinner. And it's accidentally going to happen and catch me one of these days where I'm spraying my beautiful highlighted color on, and it's going to be mixed with lacquer thinner, and I'm going to slow the whole process down to a crawl. So just try very hard, guys, to Remember that it's water with the surface paint. So in other words, the paint that's going to go on here momentarily is thinned with water. And the Rinaldi tank art books describe it and talk about it, but poor Michael, it sort of gets buried in his books. It's just one sentence out of the millions of sentences in all his books, and it's just one sentence. And I wish that Mike would bring it out in a bold print or a red print or a whatever, because it's so easy to read over top of, and it's obviously the most important thing in using hairspray. So mix with water. All right, so I've mixed with water, and now we're ready to roll. So we have a very dark color on here, and it's this mixed with NATO black, and that's our burn area in this Panther. And I'm just, like I say, I'm gonna just test my color. So I'll pick the darkest area, say on this left-handed hatch here, where the hinge is. Alright, so right now I'm just testing because there's no tomorrow, guys. When you switch to your main vehicle, you can't have it incorrect. So is the question I'm asking myself, is that light enough? Is that going to create my nice contrast? And I think I'm onto it. So I think I'm good to go. Alright, so we'll take our shell-hitted areas, or shell-hit thing, which has been covered with hairspray. Alright, so there's a little bit of contrasty color there. Give this a little bit of variance too. And we're almost ready to start chipping. But what I'll do is I'll just continually build up a little coat of light color. And because we're spraying over top of the dark, it takes it takes me a little bit of time to do this, because I'm spraying very, very thin coats of this light pinkish color. So that's why it's taking a minute to build up. The unfortunate thing with so many World War II shots, of course, is that they're in black and white. So we're sort of on our own here. We can guess at what color these are in real life, but I think that as long as it's consistent Like I'm not, because of the nice warm colors on our tank, going to the orange side of things is just not. It's just not going to measure up for me. If this tank was a lighter color, like say a African tank, probably getting to the orange tones would be fine. But because of the colors in our tank, staying on the reddish side is, I think, better for us. I think we're ready to start chipping the hairspray. And then we're gonna go over top of all this too with oil washes and things like that. There's a little bit of overspray. The color's starting to appear. So what I'll do is now unwrap this. I'll shut our pump down. See, so now it's starting to take on that feeling, and don't forget, gentlemen, we have fine airbrushes, the type of airbrushes that you and I use, so we're gonna be able to add a little bit of more color once we start the chipping. If it isn't quite right, we narrow it down with some smoke color and what have you. So there's gonna be a lot, but look at the nice blend in here. You can definitely tell that there's been some scorching and what have you happening. So, and a lot of heat. So, and we want to stay away from this color, and it's tricky to do. You have to know your color palette, because if this color matches that color, it gets lost in it all. From a distance, your tank isn't going to look correct. So, these colors, these dark colors, are way off of this color, and that's what you want. Fortunately, they're in the same family though, so the harmonizing is still there. So it still looks correct. If this was a bright orange right now, or one of the the exploded up tanks that MIG seems to get done, it would fight that green and soft yellow that we've put on there. There'd be a vicious fight. Now, being a combat tank that's been hit with shell heads, maybe that's what he was trying to do. But me, I'd rather harmonize it together. It's just more pleasing to the eye. So, all these things go back to my interior design days. These, unfortunately, are not they're inherent to me, but they're maybe require a little more study by, you know, the speed in which we're going to accomplish what we're doing here. Just so that we all can get it, and we can all, because we've all talked about blowing up tanks with Russian or American armies walking by with the troops. We've all talked about these sort of vignettes and dioramas, and so here's the time to do it. All right, so now I'm gonna shut the camera down for a minute, let this paint sit on the tank for another 2 or 3 minutes, maybe even put the hairdryer to it, just so that it's dry, and then we'll come back and start the chipping. Alrighty, thank you. Okay, gentlemen, so I've taken a little pot of warm water. It's actually hot water, but it'll cool down quite rapidly. So all we're going to do is start stippling effect, and just where the shell actually hit the tank. That's why I protected the other parts of the tank, because I'm not going to chip all over. I'm just going to chip where these shell hits came in contact with the tank. The burning part of it isn't going to require, the hairspray and all that sort of stuff. All this area in here, there's no hairspray underneath there. And the brush I use for this is one of those old $2 Testors paint brushes. The bristles are lousy. You couldn't paint with them or anything like that, as far as preciseness. But they're firm, they're nylon, and they're perfect for doing what I'm doing here. I think over the years, I've talked about these brushes and the hairspray technique, and I think the testers people have been the beneficiary of people using hairspray on their models, because they are the great brush for that. All right, I'm just gonna wipe away the excess water and stuff like that, and we'll see how our hits have come out. So just let me put the blow dryer on this, get rid of these bubbles, and then we'll do some ash, because the like a wool, the German army used wool uniforms for a reason. Number one is not the fact that they're warm. The number reason is that they're flame retardant. Wool is a flame retardant natural fiber. Later on, after the war, of course, or before the war, they used it in aircraft seats and all that sort of stuff. If you were ever in an airplane flying in the 60s or 70s, the textile on the upholstery of those seats you were sitting on was made out of wool because of the flame retardancy. Well, they had to use the same thing when they used made Zimmers. Yes, we all know that it's a sawdust compound and all that sort of stuff. The chemicals in there are also designed for not burning, not catching fire. You never see photographs of tanks engulfed in flames that were covered in Zimmers. It didn't happen. It was designed that way to be a flame retardant. But the reasons, of course, are for Zimmer was for the magnetic mines not to stick on them. Little did the Germans know, probably the Americans and Russians never practiced it, but that's here nor there. But because there was sawdust in that anti-sticking formula that they came up with, they also had to counteract that with a flame retardant product. Because, like I say, you couldn't have your king tire rolling along in flames. So keep that in mind when you're doing all this. There's going to be a stretch of ash around the perimeter of our Zimmered chipped away product here. So that's going to be done with our flat white momentarily. But so there's a nice variety of colors that we're going to put in here, and it's going to look appropriate in a second. But let me just off camera take the blow dryer to this. So I'll dry it off, and we'll look at our shell hits and see how we're doing. All right, hang in. Okay, so once you do the hairspray, and you can see, gentlemen, how subtle it is. You know, it's extremely subtle. Let me use this toothpick to guide right along in here. Subtle, subtle, subtle hairspray. And then you take your NATO black, just direct NATO black, which I mixed up off camera, XF69. Mixed it with about 90% thinner. And right where the shell hole hits, I'm just gonna, and you're not even gonna be able to see this on camera. But now those shell hits are becoming 35th scale, and that's the important part here too, is that we're dealing with a scale of 35th scale. So this shell hit actually doesn't go all the way through the tank. This one was a glance. So we'll just powder that up as well. Just create a little shadow. Like so. So that one didn't burn all the way through. Maybe it was fired from a much longer distance, from a Sherman or something like that. So now I'm going to mix some oil paints in the appropriate colors and start lightening up around here and putting on some of that ash that we described. And just suddenly this will pop out a little better than now, simply because it will just suddenly be surrounded by a lighter color. So the contrast is still to come. And then don't forget the tops of these hooks too, guys. When these tanks were in combat, of course, they were laced with extra track. And the ones that are missing, of course, are going to expose the tops of these hooks. And they're going to be that iron, manhole cover type of color that I haven't put on yet, because I haven't decided, how many tracks I'm going to have remaining and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, in this area, there's going to be no tracks. They're going to have been hit by shells and sort of knocked off the tank. Maybe when the diorama comes around, there's a few busted up tracks laying on the top of the hull here. But nevertheless, let's stay with our shell hits. I'm undecided yet whether or not to, with a Winsor Newton 10-0, put a little bit of metallic color in there. I'm going to study some contemporary shell hits in my books. Middle East, Desert Storm, or what have you, and just see if there's going to be much metallic showing right where the shell hit was. So that's a little study that I'll do off camera, of course. But right now I'm going to add some ash and what have you to the edges of the Zimmerit. So let me go mix my paints, and I'll be back to you in a couple of seconds. Thanks. Okay, so now I'm going to put that little bit of ash around the edges of the Zimmerit. What to do, gentlemen, is to use the same colors as you were using in this light color, mixed up with a little more water and a little bit of flat white. So you still want, and the reason I use the airbrush colors, because it's very accurate. Obviously, I just airbrushed it on the tank, so you're not going to go back to your little pot and start mixing and getting it off color. So what I want is a dead pink kind of color, and then I'll come back and brighten it up with and it's very liquidy. I'm mixing this with water. Now stay away. I'm going to stay away off of here with the shell head. That's probably going to be, really burnt right underneath there. So I'll stay away with the ash. The ash would have been, with the oxygen in the air and everything, it would have been sucked right in. So, and this is just a lousy little brush. A lousy being that the hairs are not consistent. It's not a Winsor Newton little 10-0 brush for a reason. I want the hairs all wiggly and used, and that way it doesn't stay uniform. If I was doing this with a 10-0 Winsor Newton brush, these lines wouldn't be wiggly ziggly. They'd be, perfect. So we don't want that going on. So only frame the Zimmerited areas. Don't start framing up in here because there's no Zimmerit. Don't start applying ash up in here. Now, with where the position of these shell hits are, this is all going to be burnt, similar to my roof of my Panther over here. All right, now I'm gonna do that off camera, but I'm gonna fry all up in here. We're gonna lose all that camouflage detail, and but that's for obvious reasons, and maybe even a little bit of up in here, that there's going to be some explosion burns. So right now we're dealing with the Zimmerited edge. See, like right in here, like I don't like the way that's going. There, it's too consistent versus all in here. So what I'm going to do is just go back probably with my airbrush and a little bit of this dark color, and lots of thinner, and I'll just recreate that burn. So you can see it's starting to come together. Down in here, I'll get a lighter color also in my airbrush, but I'll do those things off camera. But very soon this will look like the part it's supposed to be. So let me just put this back on the body. And then what we'll do is we'll bring out the original book, the drawing of the that this whole tank was inspired by. We'll bring that out and look at the contrasts and compare notes. So that's it for today. And this is the like I say, we'll get back on point momentarily. I'll do all this burning off camera. There'll be a little bit of burning up in here off camera, and we'll be back to talk to you shortly. Thanks so much for watching today. Take care.